Blessings and welcome to the Path to Freedom and today's exploration of trust. My name is Daniel Roquéo, and as always, I'm deeply grateful and honored that you're choosing to join me, that you are choosing to tune in for a moment of expanding our consciousness, in a moment of raising our vibration, so that we continuously get to set ourselves free, so that we continuously get to allow for forever greater and greater expressions of who we are to emerge, so that we get to set ourselves free to be in ever-expanding love and joy and harmony and wholeness and all of that. And as it has come to me recently, so that we get to set ourselves free to be sane in this insane world that we are living in. And at the core of all of this, and if you've tuned in before, you've probably heard me speak about how there are two things that we need to do. That the freedom that we are moving toward, that it rests on two foundational pillars, if you will. There's there is the practice of presence that we allow to expand in our lives, where we continuously come back to the nowness of this moment, where we find a way to ever increasingly and ever expandingly anchor and center and ground ourselves in the nowness of this moment, where we get to witness and observe what is happening in our minds and what is happening in the world around us without being pulled into it, without being hijacked by it. And then the other pillar would be us coming into ever greater and grander expressions, I was going to say, but what I meant to say was us coming into deeper realizations as to who and what God is. And with that deepening of realizations, with those deeper realizations, the expansion of our trust happens. And the more we trust, so what is it that we are trusting? Well, we are trusting basically three things about God. We are trusting that God is good. First of all, we're trusting that God is, that this loving presence that it is all that there is, that there are no dualities, there are no opposites, there is only spirit expressing itself, being itself, doing itself in us and through all of creation. God is the creator and the God is the creation. We can choose to call it whatever we want to call it. I choose to call it God or spirit or the loving presence. But whatever we call it, it is it. It is all there is. And we're trusting that this loving presence is good, that it is benevolent, that it is always for itself, that it is always seeking to come into ever greater and grander expressions of itself, thus eternally sourcing and fueling and funding itself, thus sustaining and maintaining itself, thus guiding and leading and moving itself in us and through all of creation. And we are trusting that this loving presence is always expressing itself perfectly, that there are no random acts, there are no meaningless acts, there are no coincidences, but there is only divine and perfect order. Only divine and perfect order. And when we know these, the more we trust these, even in the midst of calamity, even in the midst of challenges and circumstances that do not seem to be favorable, when we trust that even in this, my mind cannot see the good that is here. My mind cannot see the presence of God here. So there are shootings, there are violence, there's natural occurrences, there are so many things in our world that would have us move into fear and worry and doubt, that would have us believe that this is bad. And I'm not saying that things that are happening, I'm not saying that people are not suffering, I'm not saying that people are not having experiences, I'm not saying that on the surface things are bad. But even in the midst of that, which the mind would call bad, God is still present, and God is still good, and God is still expressing Himself perfectly. So in every condition, in every circumstance, in every challenge, there's an invitation for us to go deeper. Now, we've been given the free will. We've been given this beautiful mind, this beautiful gift of independent thinking, allowing us to turn our attention toward whichever way we want to turn our attention. And God, being unconditional love, does not care. Now, I'm speaking about God as God being out there and we being down here, but that's not the case. We and God are one. We are unique, perfect, whole, and complete emanations and expressions of the one. But even so, having been equipped with this beautiful mind of ours, the freedom to make choices, whichever choices we want to make, when we can choose fear, we get to choose worry, we get to choose doubt, we get to choose trust, we get to choose love, we get to choose peace. Drama is optional. We get to choose to turn our attention toward what we don't wish to experience, or we get to choose to turn our attention toward what we wish to experience. So in a challenge, some of us may choose to play that victim card, feeling very sorry for ourselves, feeling very stuck, feeling very alone. Or some of us may choose to look for the good in this challenge. What good is here that I presently cannot see? What gold is here? What is the gift and the blessing in this particular challenge? What is my growing edge here? And depending on where we turn our attention, depending on what we're looking for, that is what we will find. So if we're looking, even in the midst of, let's say, a shooting, even in the midst of that, what is the gift and the blessing here? What is the good that is seeking to emerge? Well, there is expansion of consciousness. There perhaps a review of the laws allowing guns to be handed out to people very freely. Not in all countries, but in some countries. There's always an invitation for us to grow, for us to expand, for us to allow for more of the love that we are, more of the joy that we are, more of the wholeness that we are, more of the abundance that we are, to allow for more of these to come forth, to emerge from within us. There's always that invitation in every single moment. So that song by the Beatles that goes, all you need is love, and so on. I would say all we need is trust, because when we trust that even in conditions that the mind cannot comprehend, even when we cannot see the good that is here, even when we cannot feel the good that is here, we can still trust that this is good in progress. Yes, this is bad. This needs to change. Circumstances, systemic conditions needs to change. There are a lot of things that need to change on this planet. There are a lot of things that need to be evolved in the human consciousness. I'm not saying that there is not. I'm simply saying that we get to choose what to look for. And when we know that God is here, that the only thing that is happening here is God, when we know that God is good, when we know that God is always expressing Himself perfectly, then we get to look for that. We get to trust that even in the midst of calamity, even in the midst of conditions that give rise to suffering and resistance and sadness and anger and all that. And I'm not denying these experiences. I'm not denying these emotions. I'm not denying these thought forms. Not at all. I'm just saying that even in the midst, we get to choose to turn our attention away from the seeming bad to the gift and the blessing that is here, that is always here. Because God cannot compromise itself. God cannot contradict its own nature. There is an expression. It's an ancient expression. It's very, very old. That goes, all roads lead to Rome. All roads leads to God. All paths leads to, not to God, but to our conscious realization of being one with it, to our awakening to who and what God is. Just as nature knows, inherently, instinctively knows its oneness with God. So there is no fear in nature, there's no worry in nature, there's no doubt in nature, there's no sense of lack in nature, there's no sense of I am not enough in nature. But all of nature knows. It knows that it is enough. It knows that it is eternally sourced, field funded. So there needs to be there's competition, but there needs to be no egoic competition. It needs to be no race over who is better, over who's superior. But there's a beautiful balance in nature, a balance that we humans have not yet caught, or actually that we have forgot, because we are so hijacked by our mental structures, by our egoic structures, bespeaking of lack, bespeaking of separation, bespeaking of not being enough. So we move through life as though life was an obstacle course, and whoever gets the most or who gets there the fastest, they win. That's not what life is about. Life is a beautiful journey, but we as humans, as a race, are so hijacked by the fear and the worry and the doubt, by our sense of not being one with everything, that we believe that might gives right, that we believe that violence is I was going to say last resort, but that it is the best resort, that it is the best response. So we've gone amiss, we've gone astray. And so the invitation is for us to come back to the harmony that is life, to the harmony, the wholeness, the beauty. That lily on the field consciousness. The lily on the field, it doesn't spin, it doesn't toil, it doesn't effort, it doesn't struggle, it doesn't compete, it doesn't compare. And yet it is so beautifully provided for, so abundantly provided for, as is all of nature, as is all of nature. So we get to trust, we get to come back to trusting that even here, even now, God is. Goodness is, perfection is. And then move from that, respond from that, choose from that. How can I serve? Certainly not by violence, certainly not by hitting back, but how can I serve? How can I serve? How can I be of service? How can I be a beneficial presence on this planet? What is mine to do in this moment? Or what is here now? Well, when we dig deep enough into that question, we come into the realization that the only thing that is happening here is God. The only thing that is happening here is good, from that highest vantage point, which will not ever be reached by our intellectual mind, because the mind is very finite. It's not very finite. It's not very finite. It is finite. But through meditation, through prayer, through coming into the nowness of this moment, through consciously choosing, exercising our ability to choose where to turn our attention, what to look for. This is a profound invitation It requires an immense willingness, a whole lot of courage to look for the good, to come out from among them, to come out from gossiping, to come out from complaining, to come out from bemoaning, to come out from competing, to come out from comparing, to come out from giving in to the lowest common denominator, fear, worry, and doubt, to rise above all of these. This is our invitation. We're all being called to do this work. Not all of us are answering the call. Not all of us are doing the actual work, but we're all being called. And the planet needs it now more than ever. Humanity, the transformation is already happening, but we need to participate in that which is. The highest possibility for humanity already exists. The highest possibility for this planet, for Mother Earth, already exists. But we need to participate. We need to step up. We need to, and when I say we, I mean every single one of us, need to roll up our sleeves and ask ourselves the question, how can I serve? How can I contribute? Well, giving into fear, worry, and doubt, sense of lack and scarcity, that's not good enough anymore. I'm holding no judgments around this. I'm having no opinions about it. I'm just observing, witnessing that where we used to get by fear and worry and doubt, giving into these, allowing ourselves to be hijacked by these are no longer enough. We need to rise above these if we want a midwife, if we want to be the instrument, the vehicle through which the new consciousness of humanity, through which a new world emerges. So that's the invitation, and the question for us to ask is, what is mine to do? Or how can I serve? Or how can I be a beneficial presence now, in this moment? Because we need to trust. We get to trust that all is well, that something wonderful is happening, that everything is working for the highest good. So thank you so much for tuning in, for participating. Until we meet again, much love, many blessings.